We are officially at the end of the PS4's life cycle. The console sales have slowed down to almost nothing, and as Sony and the rest of the industry shift their focus to current-gen hardware, game releases for older consoles are beginning to dry up as well. To say the very least, the PS4 years have been massively successful for Sony. It wouldn't be, in fact, an exaggeration to say that the console may very well have one of the greatest gaming libraries for a system ever, which means that ranking the best of those games isn't exactly an easy task. Here, however, that's exactly what we're going to do, as we count down our top 30 PS4 games of all time. Number 30. Dreams. Media Molecule took its sweet time coming out with Dreams, but when the game finally launched, it proved to be well worth the wait, taking the developer's play, create, share philosophy and turning it up to 11. Dreams is the ultimate toolbox that seems to place almost no limits on your creativity. Meanwhile, the level of options and flexibility it provides are just as impressive as how accessible and easy to use it makes its massive toolset. Number 29. Wolfenstein II: The New Colossus. Machine Games' revival of Wolfenstein perhaps doesn't get the credit it deserves. The fact that the series seems to have re-entered hibernation certainly doesn't help matters. But as the majority of those who have played Wolfenstein II: The New Colossus, or even its predecessor, they'll tell you it's a game well worth paying attention to, from its incredible characters and storytelling to the adrenaline-fueled action it delivered throughout its meaty campaign. Wolfenstein II was a breathtaking joyride from beginning to the end. Number 28. Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus will always be in the upper echelons of PlayStation, and Bluepoint Games was more than up to the task of revitalizing the classic for a new system. The PS4 Shadow of the Colossus remake served as a perfect reminder for why this game is so beloved as it is. And they did a spectacular job of recreating its beautiful, desolate world and its stellar story. That the game still holds up so long after its original release says volumes about its inherent quality. Number 27. Dishonored II. Arcane has developed a number of solid games over the last decade or so, and even in that group, there's a strong case to be made that Dishonored 2 is the studio's best work yet. It's built upon its predecessor's strengths in the best ways possible by delivering another spectacular stealth sandbox, full of options for players. On top of that, with 2 playable protagonists available, it offered twice the options, and really twice the fun. Number 26. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain can be justifiably criticized for many great things. To that extent, though, it might have just been the most flawed experience in the entire list, and yet, even so, it's hard to deny the genius of its core design. In terms of pure gameplay, nothing beats Metal Gear Solid 5 in the stealth genre even today. It delivered on its promise of emergent gameplay that encouraged endless replayability and experimentation, even if the second half of the game is a huge disappointment when it comes to the content it has to offer. Number 25. Horizon Forbidden West. Guerrilla Games struck gold with Horizon Zero Dawn in 2017, and given the impact that the game had, it's fair to say that successfully improving upon it with a sequel was no easy task. Thankfully, Forbidden West proved to be more than up to the task. The open-world action RPG takes the Horizon formula and makes it better in almost every way, from side quests and traversal to how much more compelling the gorgeous open world felt to explore. As an iterative sequel, it does pretty much everything it needed to do. Number 24. Astrobot Rescue Mission. Given the fact that it's a PlayStation VR exclusive, it's no surprise that Astrobot Rescue Mission hasn't seen the sort of mainstream success and recognition that other PlayStation exclusives have. But as anyone who's played it will tell you, it absolutely deserves it. Not only does the game make use of virtual reality perfectly, it also's just an incredibly designed platformer in its own right. It was also bursting with ingenious creativity and variety in the platforming challenges it presented. For fans of the genre, it's unmissable. Number 23. Disco Elysium Final Cut. Disco Elysium was easily one of the best and biggest surprises of 2019, turning out to be one of the best games of that year. And last year, developer ZA/UM opened the door for a larger player base when the game's Final Cut launched for PlayStation consoles and Stadia as well. Disco Elysium: The Final Cut improves upon the base game in various ways, from adding full voiceovers for the entire script, which are excellent, to adding new content in the form of political vision quests. In our review of the game, we awarded it a score of 9 out of 10, saying, Disco Elysium was already an excellent game when it first launched, and with the final cut, it's been made even better. Number 22. Celeste. One of several indie classics that has gone down as an instant classic, Celeste is a game that fans of platformers simply cannot miss. Its precise movement, excellent level design, and the perfect balance it strikes between challenge and accessibility deserves a ton of praise. While even beyond gameplay, there's a lot to love. Celeste tells an emotional story and tells it very well, and visually, its pixel art style is incredibly charming. It's easily one of the best platformers, and you can play it on the PS4. Number 21. Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's inherent risk involved in remaking a game as beloved as Final Fantasy VII. And that risk effectively gets doubled at the very least when you take the sort of approach that Square Enix did with Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's fair to say that it's paid off until this point. Final Fantasy VII Remake boasts incredible visuals, excellent music, and probably the best combat system in a Final Fantasy game to date, which is high praise. In spite of the fact that it only focuses on the original Midgar section, it feels like a fully fleshed out experience that crucially also seems to be setting up some exciting things for the future. Number 20. Uncharted IV: A Thieves End. Naughty Dog decided to end Nathan Drake's story with Uncharted IV: A Thieves End. And what a sign-off it was. It would be fair to call it the ultimate realization of the Uncharted formula. The game delivered those classic explosive set-piece moments that the series has always been known for in spades, but also expands on the framework by making significant improvements in both stealth and combat, while also greatly expanding the horizons when it comes to level design. Number 19. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice surely shares a lot of its DNA with From Software's Soulborne games, but even so, it probably is the developer's most unique game in recent years, thanks to its laser-sharpened focus on its core loop of parries and fast attacks, rather than offering more freedom in a build variety. For many, that's a bit of an issue, but those who do buy into that core loop, and there's no shortage of those people, there's nothing quite like Sekiro. The list of incredible boss fights and combat encounters in the game is endless, and the pure joy you feel when you finally overcome some of the challenges is indescribable. Number 18. It Takes Two. Hazelight Studios' It Takes Two came out last year and offered another compelling co-op adventure from A Way Out director Josef Fares. The story sees Cody and May struggling with their marriage. One day, they're magically turned into dolls and must work together to survive. It Takes Two features a diverse range of levels, each is based on different parts of the couple's lives. Like a chessboard turned into a toy castle where time can be controlled, and a greenhouse that's become overrun by vines and thorns. There's even the old vacuum cleaner that's out for revenge. Number 17. Overwatch. Blizzard has received plenty of well-deserved criticism for the way it has handled Overwatch in recent years, and the game's contribution to the spread of loot boxes at the time was undeniable, but there's also no denying the fact that it is easily one of the best and most universally acclaimed multiplayer shooters to have ever been made. Its excellent characters, the unique personality of its setting and world, and how plain fun it was to jump into a match every single time cannot be praised enough. Number 16. Inside. Playdead's indie classic is frequently held up as one of the best games of its time, and it's easy to see why. It's an experience that stays with you long after you're done with it. Its haunting world, its clever puzzle design, how effectively it tells its unique story without ever uttering a single word, how strikingly beautiful it constantly looks thanks to its minimalistic art style. There's no shortage of things in Inside that can be praised endlessly. Number 15. Ghosts of Tsushima. Sucker Punch has been an important part of PlayStation for a long time, but there's no doubt that the studio delivered its best and biggest game ever with Ghosts of Tsushima. The open-world samurai epic is an astoundingly good game that you can easily lose yourself in for dozens upon dozens of hours. Exploring its gorgeous open world never gets boring. Its combat is incredibly satisfying, and the stealth, in spite of how rough it can be at times, offers players with an extensive arsenal of tools and abilities to make use of. Number 14. Hades. Supergiant is probably one of very few studios that has never, ever made a bad game. But even in spite of such a spotless track record, Hades is still probably the studio's best game yet. And that is high praise well earned. The way it uses its roguelike structure for storytelling purposes and makes that repetition such a core part of the experience is simply ingenious. While the moment-to-moment combat and progression never fail to hold your attention either, even if you don't ordinarily enjoy roguelike games, Hades is well worth checking out. Number 13. Nier Automata. Platinum Games and Square Enix hack-and-slash action RPG Nier Automata has earned its place as one of the best games of its time, purely on the back of how unique it is. From its world and its story to even the way it's structured, Nier Automata is a game that is never afraid to take risks, which of course works because the game's no slouch when it comes to executing its insane ideas either. Even on a system that is densely packed with great RPGs as the PS4 is, Nier Automata stands head and shoulders above the rest of the competition. Number 12. Yakuza 0. Yakuza is where Sega's series finally broke out into the mainstream, and with good reason. This game, by becoming a prequel, shed the by then ridiculous narrative baggages that the game had accrued by focusing on Kamachuro and Sotenbori. It emphasized its two strongest maps and then filled them with a wealth of great activities. By focusing on its two strongest characters as its protagonists, it gave players immediately compelling leads to empathize with. And by setting itself in 1980s Japan, it achieved a vivid and stark aesthetic as a period piece that no other game in the series matches. Yakuza 0 isn't just the best game in the series, it's one of the best games on the PS4. Number 11. Monster Hunter World. Speaking of franchises that got their mainstream breakout hit on the PS4, Monster Hunter World is another game that took its series into the stratosphere. Capcom's action RPG very quickly became one of the company's most successful games of all time, and that success is very well earned. The sheer variety on offer in its gameplay with all of the unique weapons there are to master, the incredible design of the monsters, and the excellent fights that it leads to, the ridiculous addictive nature of the loot grind, it all comes together just so perfectly. Number 10. Marvel's SpiderMan. Insomniac and SpiderMan truly turned out to be a match made in heaven. The famous wall crawler has been the star of a few great games over the years, but with 2018's Marvel's Spider-Man, he completely took the industry by storm. This is easily one of the best first-party PlayStation games that we've ever played. The silky smooth combat, the slick traversal mechanics, and the incredible story, and how excellently it uses some of Spider-Man's most beloved characters. We can go on and on about the things that we love about Marvel's Spider-Man. Number 9. Resident Evil 2. Capcom's beloved survival horror franchise made a remarkable recovery during the PS4 years, and Resident Evil 2 is undoubtedly the peak of that recovery. The original RE2 is, as it is, one of the best games of its time, and its remake replicates that success and perhaps even exceeds it. It strikes a perfect balance between recreating the original and injecting the experience with its own fresh new ideas. And in the process, it creates what is probably one of the greatest horror games ever made. Number 8. God of War. What can we say about God of War that hasn't been said a million times already? And yet, no matter how many times we say it, it doesn't quite do justice to how astoundingly good the game's turned out to be. Way better than most of us could have ever hoped for. Reinventing the series in such a radically different fashion took a lot of guts, but Sony Santa Monica proved to be up to the task. To create a sequel that feels so comprehensively different and yet at its core, still feels so familiar is no easy task. But God of War 2018 does exactly that with great aplomb. Number 7. The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 is a game that divides opinion, to say the very least, with a number of its narrative decisions having proven unpopular with some fans. But we can't get enough of this game. One way or another, its story makes an incredible impact with most of its biggest swings, and the fact that it takes no pulls, no punches deserves a ton of credit. On the gameplay front, meanwhile, The Last of Us Part 2 is a monumental upgrade, and thanks to the improvements it introduces with its movement options, stealth, level design, and more, it might very well even be the best linear stealth experience of all time. Number 6. Hollow Knight. We have spoken about a number of indie darlings in this list so far, but this right here is probably the king of all indie games. Metroidvanias have enjoyed a resurgence in recent years, which means there's no shortage of options for fans of the genre, but Hollow Knight is on a completely different level from most of its peers. From its vast, intricately designed world to the pixel-perfect nature of its combat and movement, from its perfect blend of combat, platforming, and exploration to how overflowing it is with stellar content and incredible boss fights. Hollow Knight is a game that never stops smacking you in the face with its brilliance, right up until the very last second. Number 5. Persona 5 Royal. Persona enjoyed probably the biggest mainstream explosion of any franchise on the PS4, which tracks because Persona 5 and its expanded version Persona 5 Royal is one of the greatest role-playing games ever made. And there's more than a few arguments to be made for the game on that front. Whether that's for its excellent combat, which can turn even the biggest turn-based naysayers into believers, or its long-winded but unforgettable story, which is full of a cast of amazing characters, or how every nook and cranny of the game is filled with style and personality, in terms of both how it looks and even its unparalleled soundtrack. Number 4. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. CD Projekt Red ended the PS4 Xbox One generation in the doldrums, but in its early years, the Polish developer was flying high, and every ounce of praise the developer got at the time was well earned, because The Witcher 3 deserves all the praise in the world. It sparked something of a revolution in open-world game design, proving beyond a doubt that a game can have stellar side quests and optional content, even if it is an open-world experience, and that true choice and consequence mechanics can be implemented even in an RPG of this scale. Number 3. Elden Ring. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that applying the Souls formula to an open-world setting will probably make for a great game, and yet it's still surprising just how good Elden Ring is. From Software has proven time and time again that it doesn't do anything half-baked. It's a stupidly massive world, yes, but it earns the right to be that massive because the size never dilutes the incredible quality of its level design it has on offer. Number 2. Bloodborne. Bloodborne might lack the impact and novelty factor of the original Dark Souls or the aforementioned Elden Ring, but in terms of pure execution, this right here is From Software's finest work ever. Level design, art design, music, world building, lore, combat, boss fights, pretty much every single thing that's important in a From Software title, Bloodborne absolutely nails. On top of all that, with its uniquely fast-paced combat and its chilling gothic horror setting, it also makes you mark in a way that no other game has ever managed. In nearly every way possible, Bloodborne represents From Software at the peak of its powers. Number 1. Red Dead Redemption 2. It's hard to look past Red Dead Redemption 2 for a list such as this one. Rockstar's open-world masterpiece is such an unbelievable accomplishment in game design and storytelling that you can't help but be completely bowled over by it. Its massive, gorgeous world is brimming with a level of detail that's rare to see in games, especially on this scale, so that every second you spend exploring it feels like an experience unlike any other. Its excellent cast of characters, including probably one of the greatest video game protagonists of all time, drives forward a captivating narrative that keeps its claws in you until the very last second, and it stays in the memory long afterward. It truly is a game unlike any other. Even though it undeniably does have flaws, then again, every game does. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe. Let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.